The galaxy was not peaceful. It only looked peaceful from the outside. Inside the Galactic Council, fear was growing every cycle. And at the center of that fear was humanity. Earth had joined the Council only a few decades ago. But in that short time, humans had done something no other species ever did. They expanded too fast. They learned too fast. And they refused to slow down. At first, the Council saw humans as weak newcomers, a young species with loud voices and small ships. But that belief did not last long, because humans were not behaving like newcomers. They were behaving like something that had been waiting for the galaxy to open its doors. And now they were inside. Milky Way, a disturbing report. On the edge of Council space, a research fleet disappeared. No distress signal. No wreckage. No survivors. Only silence. 3 weeks later, a damaged probe returned. It carried one short recording. The video showed a human exploration ship, but it was not destroyed. It was surrounded, not by one enemy fleet, but by 3 different alien species working together. That had never happened before. The galaxy species did not cooperate easily, but against humans, they had. The recording showed something strange. The human ship was not attacking. It was waiting, and then it spoke one message before the signal broke. You are blocking a protected research zone. Please move aside. Then the video ended. The Council did not understand it, but they understood one thing. Humans were not afraid. Even when surrounded, even when outnumbered, they still spoke like they were in control. Classical building the Council gathers. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Every major species was present. The room was large, circular, and filled with glowing holograms. At the center, Earth, a small blue planet, too small to matter. At least that is what they used to think. A senior council member spoke first. The humans are becoming a problem. Another replied quickly. They break boundaries. A third voice added. They build colonies without permission. And they ignore council warnings. Silence followed. Then the speaker asked a question that changed everything. Are they a threat? No one answered immediately, because no one was sure. That was the most dangerous part. Humans were unpredictable. They were not the strongest species. They were not the oldest species. But they were different. They did not act like anyone else. And that made them dangerous. Warning: first contact failure. A diplomatic mission had been sent to Earth months earlier. It never returned. At first, the Council assumed technical failure. Then they assumed piracy. Then sabotage. But later, something worse was discovered. The last communication from the diplomats was recovered from a backup system. It was a voice recording. The diplomat sounded confused, even nervous. He said, "They welcomed us politely. They offered food. They smiled, but they asked too many questions." A pause. Then his voice became lower. "They're not afraid of us. They are studying us." The recording ended. No further contact was made. New Moon humanity expands. Months passed. Human ships were seen deeper in Council space. Not invading, not attacking, just moving, mapping, studying, building stations in empty regions. At first, Council ships tried to stop them, but humans always complied. Too quickly, too calmly, almost like they already expected resistance. One Council captain reported something strange. When we ordered them to stop, they stopped immediately. No argument, no delay, but their ships did not leave. They just waited. That sentence worried the Council more than any weapon could, because it meant humans were not resisting. They were adapting. Brain, the strange human mindset. A Council scientist tried to explain humans. They are emotional, he said, but they control it. They are aggressive, but organized. They are curious, but not careless. He paused before adding, "That combination is not natural." Another scientist replied, "Then what are they?" No answer came, because no one knew. Humans did not fit any known category. They were not predators, not prey, not even balanced. They were something else entirely, something that evolved under pressure no one understood. Police scarlet the incident at core 7. Everything changed at Core 7, a mining colony near neutral space. Humans arrived there first. They built a research station. Council law required permission. Humans had not asked. So a council enforcement fleet was sent. 5 ships, armed, prepared, confident. They arrived expecting compliance. Instead, they found the human station already active, fully operational, and strangely expanded. It was larger than reported, much larger. The human commander appeared on communication. He was calm, too calm. He said, "You are inside a restricted scientific zone." The council captain responded, "This is council territory. You are trespassing." A pause followed. Then the human replied, "No, this region was unclaimed. We checked." The council captain felt anger rising. "This is your final warning." The human commander tilted his head slightly and said something unexpected. "We were hoping you would say that." Milky Way, the first warning signal. Suddenly, every council ship received a signal. Not a threat, not a weapon lock, just data, massive amounts of data. Star maps, energy readings, hidden wormhole routes, unknown resource zones. It was all human collected, all precise, all perfectly organized. The council captain looked at it in shock, because humans had mapped regions that even council explorers had never reached. Then the human commander spoke again. "We have been observing this region for years." A pause, and we noticed something. The captain waited. The human continued. "You do not protect this space. You only claim it." Silence filled the channel. Then the human said the line that changed everything. "We are not here to fight you." A pause. "We are here to decide if we need to." High voltage end of part 1. The desperate call. Back in the council chamber, alarms began to activate, not because humans attacked, but because all human ships suddenly went silent. Every signal, every channel, every frequency, gone. A scientist whispered in fear. Why would they shut everything off? Another answered slowly. "I think they just stopped talking." The speaker looked at Earth on the hologram. Still calm, still blue, still quiet. Then he said, "Send a direct call to Earth." A communication channel opened. Static filled the room. Then finally, a human voice answered. Calm, clear, and completely unbothered. "This is Earth Command." The council speaker spoke quickly. "We need to speak about your actions at Core 7. A short silence followed. Then the human voice replied, "No." The channel did not cut. It stayed open, waiting. And for the first time in galactic history, the council did not know what to say next, because humanity had just answered a desperate call, without even sounding desperate. The communication channel stayed open, but no one in the Galactic Council spoke, not because they had nothing to say, but because the human reply had changed everything. A single word. No. It was simple. Too simple. And that was what made it terrifying. The council speaker looked around the chamber. Every species present was waiting for someone else to respond first. No one wanted to speak, because now they understood something uncomfortable. Humans were not reacting like other species. They were not emotional in predictable ways. They were not scared. They were not angry. They were calm, dangerously calm. Milky Way Earth Command on the line. The council speaker finally gathered his voice. "This is the Galactic Council. You are required to explain your actions at Core 7. There was a short pause. Then the human voice returned. Still calm, still controlled. "This is Earth Command." It said again. "We are not required." Silence hit the chamber like a physical force. A council advisor whispered, "They are refusing a direct council order." Another replied, "No species has ever done that." The speaker tightened his grip on the console. "This is not a request. It is a demand." The human voice responded instantly. "We heard you." Another pause. Then, "And we still decline." Warning first signs of fear. Across the chamber, nervous movement began. Council guards shifted positions. Diplomats started quiet side conversations. A few species looked at their emergency exit routes. Not because humans had attacked, but because they had not. That was the problem. No aggression, no threat display, just control and refusal. A scientist in the back of the chamber said quietly, "If they were weaker, they would obey." Another answered, "If they were stronger, they would threaten us." A pause. Then the scientist finished the thought, "But they're doing neither." That was the moment fear truly began. New Moon Earth Command continues. The human voice came again. "This conversation is logged. We suggest clarity." The council speaker frowned. "Clarity about what?" The response came instantly. "About intent." A holographic file opened in the council chamber. It was sent from Earth, not as a warning, not as a threat, but as a report. Thousands of pages of data appeared. It showed council movement patterns, military deployments, trade restrictions, border expansions, resource claims. Every action the council had taken near human space, carefully recorded, perfectly analyzed. One council officer whispered, "They have been tracking us." Another corrected him, "No, they have been studying us." And that difference was important. Too important. Brain-human thinking revealed. The file continued to expand. Then something strange appeared. Predictions. Human predictions. The data showed future council decisions. Not guesses, not estimates, but structured forecasts. And they were accurate. Too accurate. A council strategist stepped forward. "This is impossible. You cannot predict council decisions." A voice from Earth replied calmly, "We agree." The strategist blinked. Then the human continued, "That is why we do not rely on prediction alone." A pause. "We prepare for all outcomes." Silence. That sentence hit harder than any weapon ever could, because it meant humans were not reacting to the council. They were preparing for it, before it even acted. Police Scarlight the Core, 7 incident expanded. The council speaker returned to the main issue. "Explain your presence at Core 7. The human voice responded, "We established a research perimeter." The speaker said quickly, "Without permission." Another calm response. Permission was not required. The council speaker raised his voice. "You are violating council space laws." A pause. Then the human voice replied, "We reviewed your laws." A longer pause followed. Then, "They do not apply in unclaimed regions." The speaker hesitated, because technically it was true, but no one had ever used council law that way before. The human continued, "We are not occupying Core 7. We are observing it and protecting it from instability." The council speaker narrowed his eyes. "Protecting it from what?" The answer came instantly. "From you." High voltage, a shift in power. The chamber went silent again. No one spoke, because that answer changed the entire meaning of the situation. Humans were not just expanding. They were positioning themselves as protectors of space the council believed it controlled. A council general finally spoke. "You are accusing the council of instability?" The human voice responded, "We are not accusing." A pause. "We are observing." That word again. Observing. Not judging. Not attacking. Just watching. And that made it worse. Because observation meant data. And data meant preparation. And preparation meant something was coming. Milky Way, a message from Earth. Suddenly, the main screen in the council chamber flickered. A new transmission appeared. Not audio, not video, just text. From Earth Command, "We have noticed increased council military movement near human space borders." The speaker interrupted. "These are standard patrols." The message continued. "They match pre-conflict behavior patterns." The council froze. A pre-conflict pattern was a classification used in war analysis. A council officer shouted, "That is not correct. There is no conflict." The message continued. "We agree." A pause. "That is why we are concerned." New Moon Humanity's warning. The speaker leaned forward. "Are you threatening the council?" The human voice answered immediately. "No." Another pause. Then, "We are informing you." The speaker frowned. "Informing us of what?" The answer came slowly this time, carefully chosen. We do not escalate conflicts. A pause. We end them. Silence spread across the chamber again, this time heavier, more serious, because now the council understood something they did not want to accept. Humans were not warning them about war. They were warning them about outcome, warning the council divides. Whispers spread through the chamber. Some species argued humans were bluffing. Others believed humans were dangerous. A few suggested immediate military action, but most stayed silent, because none of them had seen humans fight, and that uncertainty was worse than knowledge. A council diplomat said quietly, "What if they are not lying?" Another replied, "What if they are not threatening us?" A pause. But stating a fact? No one answered, because both ideas were unacceptable. But one of them might be true. Milky Way Earth Command's final statement. The communication channel suddenly stabilized. The human voice returned for the last time. "This is Earth Command." A pause. Then, "We will maintain current operations at Core 7. Another pause. "If the Council chooses escalation, we will respond accordingly." A longer pause followed. Then the final line. "We prefer you do not." The channel stayed open, but no more words came. Just silence. High voltage into part 2. The silent shift. In the council chamber, no one moved. The speaker looked at the glowing hologram of Earth. Still calm. Still unchanged. But now, it did not look small anymore. It looked distant and independent. A council scientist finally spoke softly. "They are not asking for permission." Another whispered, "They are not even asking for peace." A pause. Then the final realization. They are deciding what comes next. The speaker closed his eyes, and for the first time in council history, he did not feel in control of the conversation, because humanity had not raised its voice, had not shown anger, had not shown fear. They had simply stated reality, and that was more dangerous than any weapon. The council chamber did not recover after the last transmission, even after the human channel went silent. The silence did not feel empty anymore. It felt watched. The hologram of Earth stayed in the center of the room, blue, calm, unmoving. But no one looked at it the same way now, because something had changed, not in Earth, but in the way the galaxy saw Earth. Milky Way, the aftermath of the call. Minutes passed, then hours. No one left the chamber. Council leaders stayed in their seats, replaying every word from Earth Command, especially one sentence. "We prefer you do not." It sounded polite, almost soft, but every species in the room understood something deeper. It was not a request. It was a boundary, and boundaries are where conflict begins. A council officer finally broke the silence. "They are positioning themselves as equals." Another responded quickly, "No, they are positioning themselves above reaction." That sentence caused discomfort in the room, because it suggested something no one wanted to accept, that humans were not responding to the council anymore. They were predicting it. Warning military response begins. Far from the chamber, council military fleets began to move, not openly, not officially, but quietly. Ships that had been stationed in neutral space started drifting toward human border zones. Commanders called it precautionary positioning, but everyone knew what it really was. Preparation for something no one wanted to name. At the same time, intelligence divisions started scanning human space, looking for weaknesses, looking for patterns, looking for anything that proved humans were still just a normal species. But they found something else instead. Nothing. No visible fleet buildup. No weapon deployments. No defensive formations. Just silence. Too much silence. One analyst said, "This is not defense." A senior officer asked, "Then what is it?" The analyst hesitated, then answered, "It is absence of fear." New Moon human space goes dark. Within 3 days, every known human signal outside Earth went dark. Trading posts stopped responding. Scientific stations went offline. Even communication relays became silent. The council called it system blackout, but no one believed it was accidental. A scout vessel reported something strange near human territory. They said all navigation markers were still active, But the ships were not there anymore. It was like humanity had erased its footprint from visible space. Not destroyed, not abandoned, just removed. One pilot said over a broken transmission, "It feels like they're still here, but they don't want to be seen." Then the signal cut. Brain the unseen strategy. Back in Council intelligence, analysts worked non-stop. Try to understand what humans were doing. One theory appeared again and again. Withdrawal, but not defeat. Something else. One analyst wrote, "Humanity is not retreating from space. They are retreating from observation." That statement caused confusion. A senior officer asked, "What is the difference?" The analyst replied, "If you retreat from space, you are still part of the map. If you retreat from observation, you are no longer part of the system." The room went silent, because that idea was worse than war. It meant humans were no longer playing by visible rules. Milky Way, a strange discovery at Core 7. Then came Core 7 again, the mining region that started everything. A Council observation drone that had been left behind finally reactivated. It had been offline for weeks. When it came back online, it transmitted a single image. At first, it looked normal. Core 7 stations still existed. Human structures still present. But then the image zoomed out automatically, and what it showed made analysts freeze. Core 7 was not a single station anymore. It was part of a network, a vast network, invisible until zoomed out. Hundreds of connected human installations stretched across unclaimed space. Not military bases, not colonies, but something else. Layered systems, self-repairing grids, energy stabilizers, communication nodes that did not rely on Council space lanes. One analyst whispered, "They were never isolated." Another finished the thought, "They were just invisible," warning the first real fear. A Council commander requested immediate defensive authorization. When asked why, he replied, "Because we have been looking at humanity the wrong way." He pointed at the Core 7 network. "If this is only one sector," he paused, "then we are not observing their expansion." Another officer completed it slowly. "We are inside it." Silence followed. No one argued, because no one could disprove it. New Moon human response returns. Then, unexpectedly, a transmission returned from Earth, not to the Council chamber, but to every Council fleet near human space. The message was identical. Short, direct, clear. "You are entering monitored zones." A pause. Then another line. "Please adjust course." A Council captain responded immediately. "This is Council space. We are not required to adjust." The human reply came instantly. "Correct." A pause. Then, "You are not required." The captain frowned. Then the next line appeared. "But you are being recorded." That changed everything, because being recorded meant one thing. History. Brain humanity's true approach. Council analysts finally began connecting the pattern. Humans were not acting like conquerors, not like defenders, not like explorers. They were acting like auditors, observing systems, recording behavior, mapping responses, and adjusting silently. One scientist said, "They are not preparing for war." Another asked, "Then what are they preparing for?" The scientist hesitated, then answered, "A conclusion. Milky Way, the Council divides again." The Council fractured internally. Some species demanded immediate withdrawal from human borders. Others demanded full military engagement. A few suggested negotiation. But none could agree on terms, because nobody understood what humans actually wanted. A diplomat said, "We have insulted them." Another replied, "We have ignored them." A third added, "We have challenged them." Then the final realization came, and they have not reacted like any of those things matter. That was the breaking point, because it meant humans were not playing emotional games. They were operating on structure, not ego, not pride, not fear, structure. High voltage final human message of the day. Before the Council could decide anything, one final message arrived. It was not addressed to leaders. It was not addressed to fleets. It was addressed to everyone. Every Council system received it. It simply said, We are still here. A pause. You are still there. Another pause. This is sufficient for now. Then the message ended. No threat, no demand, no explanation, just existence confirmed. New Moon into Part 3. The Edge of Silence. The council chamber remained frozen. The hologram of Earth still glowed in the center, but now it no longer felt like a planet. It felt like a signal. Not loud, not aggressive, just present. A council officer finally spoke. They are not escalating. Another replied. No. A pause. Then the final thought. They are waiting for us to decide what we are. No one answered, because for the first time in the history of the Galactic Council, the question was no longer about humanity. It was about everyone else. And the silence that followed was not peace. It was uncertainty. The galaxy did not change overnight, but something inside it had already changed, and no one in the council fully understood when it happened. Not during the emergency meetings, not during fleet movements, not even during the silent human messages. The real change came later, quietly, without warning. At Core 7, Milky Way, the message that was not threat. The council fleets near human border space were still holding position, tense, ready, watching. Every ship expected escalation. Every captain expected reaction. But humanity did not react like expected. Instead, another transmission arrived. It was not loud, not emotional, not aggressive. It simply said, "You are observing incorrectly." A pause followed. Then the second line, "We will assist correction." The council officers looked at each other. One spoke immediately. "This is a manipulation attempt." Another replied, "Or a warning." A third said softly, "Or a demonstration." That word changed the atmosphere. Demonstration. Because now, everyone understood something important. Humans were not explaining themselves anymore. They were about to show something. Warning Core 7, the waiting point. At Core 7, human stations remained active, but quiet. Too quiet. Council ships held position just outside the boundary line. Sensors active, weapons ready. But nothing moved for almost 6 hours. Then suddenly, all council ships detected a shift in gravitational readings. Small at first, barely noticeable, then increasing. A technician reported, "We are detecting artificial gravity distortion patterns." A captain asked, "Source?" The answer came slowly. "Everywhere." That made no sense. Until the sensors recalibrated, and reality changed. New Moon, the field expansion. A massive area of space around Core 7 began to light up on scans. Not visually, but mathematically. Space itself was being mapped differently. The grid of coordinates no longer matched standard readings. One analyst whispered, "This is not a structure." Another finished it. "It is a framework." The ships tried to adjust position, but their navigation systems began to lag. Not fail, just hesitate. Like something was slowing down decision pathways. A council engineer shouted, "Our systems are being interfered with." But another voice replied calmly, "No, they are being interpreted." That sentence caused confusion, until the human transmission returned. Brain-human explanation begins. The voice from Earth was calm as always. "This is not interference." A pause. "This is alignment." A council commander snapped, "Explain immediately." The response came instantly. "Your systems rely on independent interpretation of space." A pause. "We are standardizing reference points." Another pause. "So observation becomes consistent." The council scientists froze, because what humans were describing was not attack. It was correction of perception itself. One analyst whispered, "They are changing how we see space." Another replied, "No, how we measure it." That distinction was terrifying, because if measurement changed, then truth itself became flexible. Milky Way, the demonstration begins. Without warning, every council ship near Core 7 received identical visual output, not from sensors, but directly into navigation displays. Every screen showed the same thing, a reconstructed map of surrounding space. But it was different, not wrong, not distorted, just more complete. Hidden structures appeared. Energy flows previously undetected became visible. Microstations embedded in asteroid fields. Communication nodes hidden in cosmic dust. And most disturbing of all, they had always been there. A council pilot whispered, "We were blind." Another corrected, "No, we were limited." Warning, human message continues. The voice from Earth returned. "You are now observing with corrected parameters." A pause. "Continue evaluation." The council commander hesitated, then ordered, "Scan human structures directly." The response from sensors came instantly and changed everything. Because human structures were not just present, they were interconnected, not randomly, not loosely, but mathematically perfect. A living network spanning multiple systems. One analyst said, "This is not infrastructure." Another added, "This is intelligence distributed across space." Silence followed, because now the council realized something deeply unsettling. They had never found humanity's main fleet, because humanity did not have a main fleet. New Moon, the truth of human design. The human transmission continued. Your classification systems assume centralized control. A pause. Human systems do not require it. The council scientists stepped forward. That is impossible. All civilizations require command centers. The human reply came instantly. We replace them. A pause. With continuity. The scientist frowned. Explain. And for the first time, the human voice sounded slightly different. Not emotional, but firm. We do not build systems that can fail by removing one part. A pause. We build systems that adapt without parts. That sentence spread through the council chamber like static, because it meant something no one wanted to accept. If humanity was distributed, then destroying them was impossible, and controlling them was meaningless. High voltage, the moment of realization. Back at Core 7, council ships tried to retreat slightly, but navigation delay increased. Not enough to stop them, just enough to make movement feel unnatural. One pilot said, "It feels like space is thinking before letting us move." Another replied, "That is impossible." But no one sounded confident anymore. Then suddenly, all systems normalized again. Just as quickly as they changed, a human message appeared. Correction complete. A pause. You may proceed. A council officer shouted, "What did you do?" The answer came simply, "We aligned perception variance." Silence followed, because it meant humans had just temporarily adjusted how an entire fleet experienced space. Not physically, but perceptually. Milky Way, the fear without war. A council general finally spoke. "If you can do this," he paused, "why are you not controlling us already?" The human response came after a long pause. "We are not controlling you." Another pause. "We are observing outcomes." That sentence was heavier than any threat, because it meant humanity was not interested in domination. They were interested in results. The council general asked quietly, "What outcome are you looking for?" The reply came slowly. "Stability." A pause. "Without collapse." New Moon into Part 4. The shift in understanding. The council chamber was silent again, but this silence was different now. It was not confusion, not fear. It was realization. A scientist finally spoke. "They are not preparing for war." Another added, "They are not preparing for peace either." A pause. Then the final thought. "They are preparing for whatever survives both." The hologram of Earth flickered slightly. Still blue, still calm. But now it felt less like a world, and more like a system that had already decided how things should continue. A council officer whispered, "We thought we were judging humanity." A pause. "But humanity is already judging reality itself." No one corrected him, because no one could, and somewhere far beyond visible space, human systems continued to expand silently, not toward conquest, not toward escape, but toward balance. And the galaxy finally began to understand. Humanity was not trying to win. They were trying to ensure the game itself did not break.